Good evening, Randolph, and welcome to the Randolph Police Chief Candidates Forum. My name is Michelle Tyler, and I'm the town planner for the town of Randolph. I've been the planner since 2012 after making Randolph my home in the year 2000. Tonight, the process will go as follows, just so that you're aware of what to look for in the next hour and a half. I will provide a brief background on the three candidates, and following that, I'll be asking a series of questions that were compiled from the questions submitted online. As a way of introduction, as you're aware, Chief William Pace will be retiring from service in April after 30 years in law enforcement here in Randolph. The police chief's position is a civil service position and will be filled consistent with the requirements as outlined in statute. All three of the candidates before you completed an assessment conducted by the Commonwealth. They were tested on items such as problem solving, crisis management, leadership, and other pertinent skills. They have participated in a series of interviews this week, and including this public forum. They will then, at the conclusion of this process, a new chief will be chosen. I believe the timeline is sometime in the next week. By way of introduction, I will start with Detective Lieutenant Melissa Greener. Melissa has 18 years in law enforcement with 16 years as a member of the Randolph Police Department. She began her career at Babson College as a campus police officer and entered the police academy in 2005. Upon graduation, she held the rank of patrol officer. In 2007, Detective Lieutenant was promoted to detective prosecutor. In 2012, promoted to sergeant, and in 2014 to lieutenant. Detective Lieutenant Greener was the first female sergeant and the first female lieutenant in Randolph Police Department history. During her tenure, her roles have included emergency medical dispatching coordinator, grant writer, senior citizen outreach member, rape aggression defense coordinator, and court prosecutor. She currently serves as the department's accreditation manager and supervisor of the court prosecutor. Detective Lieutenant Greener is a graduate of Randolph High School and holds a master's in criminal justice. Next is Commander John Hammelberg. Commander Hammelberg began his law enforcement career in 1984 with the Department of Youth Services in Brockton. He joined Randolph Police in 1986 as a patrol officer. In 1991, he was promoted to detective and then to sergeant in 1997. In 2003, he was promoted to lieutenant, and in 2015, promoted to commander of operations and training for Randolph Police. Commander Hammelberg served on the South Shore Drug Task Force, provides ALICE and CRACE training, and those are responses to active shooter situations throughout the community. Commander Hammelberg is also a graduate of Randolph High School and is a candidate for a master's in criminal justice, and he and his high school sweetheart, Janine, have 3 children. Commander Anthony Marag, Tony, is a 25-year veteran of the Randolph Police Department, joining in 1996 as a patrol officer. He was promoted to detective in 2004 and lieutenant in 2014, and promoted to commander of investigative services in 2019. Commander Marag has supervised the Street Crimes Unit for 7 years and was co-founder of the South Shore Street Crimes Unit and has served as the director of the task force since 2008. Commander Marag has been a DARE officer and was the town's first school resource officer in 2004. Commander Marag is also a graduate of Randolph High School and has a master's degree in criminal justice. He is a second-generation police officer and has been married to his wife, Christine, for 25 years and has 2 college-age children. Welcome, candidates.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to get started with a series of questions, and as I outline, each candidate will be asked the same question and have an opportunity to respond. We'll start with Commander Marag, since we're here. I just have to keep track of who's going first. Thank you. And again, these questions were compiled from those posed online. So for the members of the community watching, Many of the questions have been consolidated because they were frequently asked. So you may not hear your question in exactly the terms that you presented it, but it is incorporated in here. The first question, candidates. What will you do to help advance policing in partnership or community policing to ensure that Randolph Police is an active and engaged part of the community? Commander Morag.
Well, thank you. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. It's an honor to interview for this position as police chief and to serve the community and to represent the dedicated men and women of the Randolph Police Department. Regarding that question, that goes to my strategic plan for the town. And my focus is going to be community outreach. And my idea is a unified approach to policing. I really believe that we need input from the community and from members of the police department to have this holistic vision of how to solve crimes and prevent crime and open doors with communication to the community. So the foundation of my idea for the strategic plan is what I call community enhancement partnerships. And I'm going to assign lieutenants, sergeants, patrolmen, and detectives to each district to work with the city councils from that district and the stakeholders. And together, those units, those partnerships are going to problem solve. And that's the idea of getting everyone involved. I want the community to have a say in how we're policed. And I want the community to be at the forefront of this. So those officers will be tasked with creating problem-solving ideas, talk to the community, find out what they need, what their needs are in the community. I want to have community meetings, and I'll leave it up to those districts to decide how they want to do that. They can do coffee with a cop, they can do community walks, whatever opens those lines of communication so we can problem solve together as a town. And I want the input. I want every officer in the department to be able to recognize people, have a conversation and problem solve. And that's how you get to a better world of policing. Chief Pace has laid the foundation for the last 10 years to be professional and thorough and to reach out to everyone. Now I'm going to build off this with community enhancement partnerships. It's going to get everyone involved. So I'd like to thank you for that question.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg, would you like me to repeat the question?
I think I have the gist of it. Okay. Again, I would like to thank the community of Randolph, Chief Pace, the candidates, and you, Michelle, for allowing us to give our views and answer the questions from the community. I can piggyback on what Commander Ragg says. This has to be a true partnership. The community itself will have voice, and so will our officers, as Commander Morag will say. Working side by side with the community members to create a safe and livable and vibrant community is what we need to do. Major goal of policing in Randolph should not only bring offenders to justice, but actively improve the lives of everyone that lives, works, or visits our community. I will piggyback on what Tony says. I will establish 2 community advisory boards. One will be for the community at large. The other one will be for youth of our community. Public forums and youth engagement are a necessity in the town of Randolph. In many communities, particularly that of color, communication between youth and police officers often occur at a tragic event or some type of negative event taking place in their lives. It is those experiences that we have to build on to make true partnerships with our youth that will continue into their adulthood and create progressive and open-mindedness plus a true partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener, if you'd like me to repeat the question, please let me know.
Sure, I'll take it, please.
What will you do to help advance policing in partnership, community policing, to ensure that Randolph Police is an active and engaged part of the community?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It is truly an honor to be the only female here and to be with these 2 fine gentlemen that I've worked with for years now. Community policing is the grassroots, and that's where we need to kind of go back to as a police department to involve everyone. I do want to have community meetings. I want to hear what everyone says, and not just me. I want the patrolmen out there. I want the detectives out there, the sergeants, the supervisors out there talking to people. There's no need for that robotic type police work anymore. We need to go back to humanized professionalism where it's okay to sit down and have coffee with someone. You know, our rules and regs are kind of restrictive right now where we're not supposed to go shopping in local stores. I want that. I want people out there talking to businesses and finding out what those problems are. I want a liaison program where officers that speak a language are reaching out to the communities that don't have a voice, that don't speak English. And I think without the public, we are nothing. We need information. We need help. And we want to know what those problems are to you, because what I think may be the problem may not be the problem to the community at large. And we want to get to that route. So community policing is where we need to head back to as a profession.
Thank you. And the next question, I'll be beginning with Commander Hammelberg. We have many questions. Probably half of the questions that were submitted are related to traffic concerns in the community, whether it was from speeding or failure to obey traffic signals and traffic laws. There were many questions regarding this. What is your approach to monitoring traffic and enforcing regulations to ensure that Randolph streets are safe for vehicles and pedestrians? Commander Hammelberg, you'll start.
Thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. The other day, I was leaving my office. I looked over the football field and I saw a tractor trailer with a 53-foot trailer driving down Highland Ave in a south direction. When I got to the front of the station, there's that same truck coming out of Woodlawn, turning right onto South Main Street, and he couldn't get through. One of our officers had to stop to get him past Hurley Funeral Home. It's vital that we monitor our traffic. If you look at it, you look at the intersections such as we have down at Canton Street and High Street. We're there just about nightly on some type of accidents. A lot of it is because there's no enforcement action taking place. But we really don't want to over police it. A lot of teaching goes a long way when traffic enforcement. And I'll give you an example of this. I usually take the traffic grants. I just don't sit behind my desk. I go out and I take the routes in the traffic posts. One evening, I stopped a kid traveling, say 35 miles an hour down Highland Ave by the football field. I stopped him. I engaged a conversation with him, but I could see he had a complete mistrust for what I was doing, and a complete mistrust for the police. I walked up to him. I gave him a ticket, and I go to him. I gave him a written one. I go to him. I go, listen, not all cops are jerks. We're here for a reason. About 6 months later, I pulled that same kid over. I go, hey, you remember me? He goes, no, I don't. And he had that same stern look. I go, remember, I'm the officer that told you that no, not all cops are jerks. He goes, yes, you're right, officer. So I went back to my cruiser, wrote him another written warning. I gave it to him. He goes, officer, you're 100% right. We shouldn't be speeding down these roads. So part of traffic enforcement, we have to be visible. The officers have to be out there, but we have to educate the public too on what they may perceive as proceeding in a safe direction or proceeding to an intersection in a correct way. But we're there not only to give tickets, but also to educate the traffic flow in the town of Randolph. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener, you're next on that. If you'd like me to repeat it, I can.
That's okay. I actually had this conversation with my mom last night about traffic. So Mom, if you're watching. So it's not as simple. Enforcement is not as simple for the police that everyone thinks, right? We can sit a marked cruiser by something and people aren't gonna violate the law. It will happen every once in a while, but not as much as the public is seeing it. But we're only, back to the last question, we're only as good as you guys give us the information. So we need to know the problem areas. We need to know, what's happening in your neighborhood. We need to know what intersection is bad, and deploy those units. Then, as chief, I want to work with the town to increase manpower to have a traffic unit, because I think that is a huge problem in this town. It's horrific. My family lives in town. It takes a long time to get to their house, and it shouldn't. And I agree that education is the meat of what we do. Quick stat is we give out probably 75 to 77% warnings. We don't cite a lot of people. We have conversations with people, and I think that that's a big part of it. With those community meetings and the community liaison groups, we need to instill the teaching of the traffic patterns and the Commonwealth laws and that type of thing.
Thank you. Commander Morag?
Well, thank you. I do understand that traffic is an issue and speeding is an issue in a lot of communities. In our community, we have 700 to 100 crashes a year that officers respond to. So that's a lot. There's a lot of congestion on Route 28. We're a throughway through major communities, so it can be cut through. And I understand about enforcement. And just like Detective Lieutenant Green has stated, you can't always be there. And we don't have the manpower to assign someone 24 hours a day to a certain area. So we have to couple that with education. That should be at the forefront. My belief is enforcement is the last choice. So I want education. We have a first responder program that the SROs play in the school. And I would like them to do a segment on speeding because a lot of the speeding comes from inexperienced drivers. It'd be good to show those first responders in the program, the teenagers, how to fill out an action report, what to do if you're involved in an accident. Build that foundation. Also, I'd like to use social media on our website to do videos of the dangers of speeding, distracted driving, and how it can affect your life in the community. Within my community partnerships, I also want input. So we'll work within those partnerships to find out those problem areas, the cut-through areas during busy hours. And also I understand manpower and traffic unit, and I understand we can't have units for everything. But my idea is to have secondary units so we can address these issues. I want a secondary traffic unit with a lieutenant, sergeant, and patrolman assigned to it as a secondary duty. And they'll be trained in detecting speeders, distracted driving. They'll do presentations for people in the community. And with that, I also want the traffic unit to analyze the amount of cars coming through, analyze where the speeders are, and then focus as our last resort, the enforcement on that. I've done some research on what works, and sometimes environmental design works. So maybe putting in a line in making the road narrower will slow down people. There are certain ways you can do that, use environmental design to adjust that. So if we all work together in those areas and get that information and have the traffic unit analyze the data that comes in, we could use speeding signs. There are solar powered speeding signs, not a high cost. I've seen them in other communities. And just, I know myself from driving through neighborhoods that have that. You slow down. You may not see an officer there, but it'll blink. You'll slow down. It's a cost-effective way to address speeding. And in regards to traffic, I understand Route 28 is tough in the morning hours, and it's tough at 4 or 5 in the afternoon. And we can analyze that. We know when we're going to have details out there doing construction work. And we could put something on a website a day ahead of time or the day of, saying if you can avoid North Main Street at Oak, please do. We have construction going on at that time. And if it becomes a real problem, we can assign officers during that time frame if they don't have a call and traffic's getting bad, say in Crawford Square, assign an officer to pull traffic through when possible. So there are ways that we can get creative to address these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Another frequent flyer in the questions was around quality of life or lack thereof from excessive noise from things like car stereos and dirt bikes and ATVs. How will you address those concerns? Detective Lieutenant Greener, we'll start with you.
I think it starts with that community partnership and the community meetings and the ability that the public feels comfortable coming towards us to tell us about this stuff. We get a lot of complaints and people sometimes tell us, well, this has happened 4 or 5 times. Call us 4 or 5 times. We need to go down there. People are going to take off from us. So as many times as we can get to that area we want to, don't be afraid to call us. And it's through those partnerships that hopefully we can kind of get some of the root causes to this. We do have a lot of problems at the apartment complexes with noise complaints, and we want to work with that. We want to have those liaisons really in there, finding out those type of problems and quality of life issues.
Thank you. Commander Morag, same question.
That definitely affects quality of life in the community. And we have problems with that, with the loud music playing or cars revving their engines. We do have problems at times during the summer with ATVs and dirt bikes in large house parties. I know the last few summers, there have been a lot of large house parties where out of nowhere, 500 people show up. So we need to address those issues. And I want to do that with the partnerships, but I also want to create impact teams from other departments in town, DPW, building commission, assign officers who can work together to problem solve those issues and also use our social media. If we're having a problem, start a campaign regarding that. If people are driving ATVs through your neighborhoods, call us, let us know, get a description of the ATV, who's driving it. And then we can go have conversations with people and really address the issues, especially with house parties. All of a sudden, if the neighborhood has 500 people in it, that affects quality of life. But if we have the communication ahead of time, people saying there's cars showing up, they're starting to play loud, they have a band, we can address that. We can require permits. We can require permits for certain amounts of people. So there are steps we're going to take. We just need communication to know how to really focus and address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg.
Obviously, we've all have different experiences and time on the job, but a quality of life is what we do. That's a major part of policing. We must not forget that what might not be a problem to us is a problem to someone else, especially an elderly individual or young family trying to get a baby to sleep. In the beginning of the pandemic, we started seeing flows and flows of dirt bikes driving down Main Street, ATVs driving down the road. Like they were totally disregarding what the laws are in place. There was one day I happened to be working an overtime shift. I'm driving down North Main Street. There's a gentleman on an ATV with his 5-year-old son sitting in the seat in front of him, driving down North Main Street. So we pull him over and I looked at him, I go, what are you doing? He goes, I can do this. I go, no, you know you can't. And what type of person would take their 5-year-old and put them in that type of danger? And what is that child learning from this? No, so we had that ATV taken to his house and we had a great conversation with him. But a lot of it comes down to there's certain things that people have to have respect for. They have to have respect for their neighborhoods. Just like when we go out, our officers, when they're patrolling, should notice, all right, there's an exorbitant amount of cars showing up at a particular house. Drive by, talk to them, see what's going on. I've done that myself, driving on the road. I say, all right, looks like we're going to have a party at this house. Let's go and talk to some people. If they are having a party at their house, it could be some type of engagement where we try to make them park on one side of the road. God forbid that we can't get a fire engine or a piece of apparatus down there. If we move all the cars to one side of the road, that will not be a problem. But like I said, the quality of life is a bread and butter of policing. We have to take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you. The police reform bill was adopted in December of 2020. What do you see as the top benefits of this bill? Commander Morag?
Thank you. I know there's been a lot of talk about police reform. And my belief is that we do it the right way. In our department in Massachusetts, we're at the forefront of policing, but it is always good to self-evaluate and evolve and move forward and think progressively on this. So the police reform, I welcome it. I welcome another set of eyes seeing us, holding us accountable. And there'll be a post set up, peace officer standards, and they will be certifying officers every 3 years. And that's a good thing. And officers who shouldn't be on the job and have been repeat offenders and abuse their power and use excessive force and make arrests and decisions based off race will be decertified. I welcome that. And I think every good officer in the country welcomes that. So that is a thing that's going to oversee and really focus policing and hold us all accountable. Use of force is a big part of police reform, and our department has already made the adjustments. We're at the forefront of that. We are squared away, and we have made adjustments. We have never had chokeholds, but we put banning chokeholds in our policy. And duty to intervene. If another officer sees someone using excessive force, they have a duty to intervene. And they will. They'll act appropriately, and they always have when it comes to that. But that is a standard, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. And there will be personnel files open to everyone, the public. And they should see that. They should see who's policing them. So I welcome police reform. It's not a big change for us, but we will evaluate and move forward with everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg, same question, the top benefit of police reform bill.
Initially, when police reform came out, all police officers across the Commonwealth were all frightened by it. But once we started participating in it and looking into what it is, it has significant value. If you look at it, it tells us we're going to have strict training on de-escalation. We're going to have training on bias-based policing. There is going to be, duty to intervene, which is already, it's already inbred in Massachusetts through case law. In 1993, there's a case called Commonwealth versus Adams, which holds the police responsible to intervene if someone is using excessive force. So I totally agree with that. There's also what I will add, Chief. There's been some great programs put out, one called EPIC by the New Orleans Police Department, and a new one I just came across that's coming out from Georgetown University called ABLE. What ABLE is, active bystander law enforcement, which means we will make a commitment. And I love this because it not only is it the police coming into it, we partner with the town manager, we partner with our civic groups, we partner with obviously the chief's office, and we write letters of commitment to the trainer. We'll send 3 people to be trained in it. They'll bring it back to us. It's pretty much like when I teach a class on active shooter preparedness, I show a video on bystandership. And you can actually see people not wanting to get involved unless someone else steps forward, but not us. We're going to be thoroughly trained in it, and our officers do that now. When you look at post, like Commander Ragg was saying, we already do this. We look forward to post, police officer standards and training. I work for the academies here in Massachusetts. I work for the MPTC. We are above and beyond anyone in the country. Let me tell you this, Massachusetts should have been used as a model for moving forward with this police reform. Obviously, there's going to be posts. There's two divisions of posts. There's going to be a divisions of certification. There's going to be a divisions of standards. We will work with them. Our internal affairs will work with them. We look forward to it. It's all about transparency and holding people responsible, including the police. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Thank you. So being the youngest here, I'm very familiar with change, and we've had a lot of change here. And initially, all police officers are worried about change. It's something new, but not police reform. I think it's welcomed by everyone. Everyone wants it. And the biggest takes is that we've done it, and we've done it for years. And now we just have to put it in writing. And we did that way ahead of time. I jumped on, I write a lot of policies as the accreditation manager. So I jumped on police reform and kind of reevaluated all that we did. And we've already done it. It was just a matter of putting it in a document that we do it. We slow down scenes, we de-escalate things, we talk to people. We're not just out there using force frivolously. It's basically our last resort. And I think the transparency of it, the accountability of it, all good officers want that, because we don't want those mediocre type officers holding us back from helping the community. It only gives us a bad name. No one agrees with what happens out west, because we don't do it here in Massachusetts. And we definitely don't do it here at the Randolph Police Department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. What are your thoughts about a civilian-led police oversight board that's identified in the police reform bill? Commander Hamelberg, we'll begin with you.
I'm for that, okay? And I think I stated, I'm going to start 2 advisory boards. One's going to be for the community and one's going to be for youth. We have to have that. Part of President Obama's 21st century policing is policy and oversight. Lieutenant Greener will tell you policy verbatim of what we have, all right? A lot of the public here doesn't even know that our policies exist. There has to be some oversight. They have to see that. The mission of a police oversight commission is to improve public transparency and accountability in respect to the Randolph Police Department. The cornerstone of police oversight commission would be working with community engagements such as gave encourage and value. It's a robust opportunity for community engagement, ongoing analysis and oversight. Who wouldn't want that? Seriously, all right? Who wouldn't want that? I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking for a total buy-in from our department. We've looked at other things in the past, police oversight and doing certain things within the committee and within the community, but we have to have the buy-in from every ranking officer of the department to move forward with a police oversight commission or just a plain police advisory board. 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Thanks. I don't hate the idea. I welcome it. I want people of all different backgrounds. A lot of these groups, sometimes we either have polar opposites. We have people that love the police, or we have people that hate the police. We need everything in between also. We're not trying to change minds, but we want to be transparent, and we want to show you what really happens, what's feasible to change, what's not feasible to change. So I'd want this committee to be open-minded and not just locked in one view and they hate the police or they love the police. We want to be able to give you every aspect of what's done and why it's done. And I do welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Morag.
I do like the idea of a civilian advisory board. I know Post is going to be overseeing a lot of discipline issues, but I think a lot of the issues within the community, it would help if we had a civilian advisory board. And I want that advisory board to be made up of the demographic of the town. So that it should represent the race breakdown. It should represent the age breakdown, young and old, the gender breakdown, and everyone have a say at those meetings. And also I'd like an officer assigned to the civilian advisory board. And what I want from them is input on our policies and programs. Because to me, it's crazy to develop policy and programs that people don't want. Why would I train officers and spend money out of the budget to train people in programs and bring that to the community that they don't want or need? So I would love the input of a civilian advisory board as a sounding board to give them ideas, get their input, adjust policy when needed, have them have a say in the process. And it brings the transparency that everyone craves and talks about nowadays. And it brings accountability. And I think every officer would be fine with that, would welcome that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. All too often, police officers are asked to respond to calls involving individuals in mental health crisis. What are your thoughts about funding services and resources such as social workers and mental health providers to assist officers in de-escalating these situations? Detective Lieutenant Greener, we'll start with you.
Thank you. We need it. We want it. We kind of lost out on grant opportunities to get a mental health clinician attached to the police department, and we need to get that. There's no option around it. Mental health calls that we deal with over the past couple of years, even during the pandemic, during the lockdown, were through the roof. There's always some aspect of mental health with any kind of call we're going on. And having these people that are specialized in this area would help. We might get, 4 hours, 8 hours blocks in the academy on how to deal with someone in a mental health crisis. We need more. And part of this police reform, part of the change in the department has to be better training in mental health and reaching out to community resources that can help us with that. And getting that clinician is has to be a top priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Morag?
Sure, that is a big topic, mental health. Within our department over the last 4 years, officers responded to, on average, 300 mental health calls. And I know from my time working in patrol, those are some of the toughest calls to deal with. And we don't receive nearly enough training regarding that. It doesn't come along very often, and we only have so many hours a year to train on it. But I understand that we need that training and to be focused in it, because a lot of the issues come from not understanding the other side, especially with mental health. When you show up to a call, you don't know what that party's dealing with and has dealt with. It brought them to this point. And you have to show empathy and compassion. And our officers do an amazing job handling mental health calls. Those are tough situations. But also, they need to understand that sometimes just stepping away from that is a de-escalation technique that's needed. And we should do training in that, knowing not to corner certain people on a mental health call, de-escalate, get some information on that. And we do have officers trained in CIT training, and that's crisis intervention training. So they have a specialty in handling mental health, but we need all the officers to get on board with that. And that would be my focus, to get them trained. And Detective Lieutenant Greener was stating about the clinician. And I would like to revisit that and make that a priority. A clinician is that next step. And they can advise the officers on a follow-up when they go to a house to follow up after we've had 2 mental health calls at the same residence, the same person over a week. What does that family need for support? They might not have the resources. So we can point them in the right direction with a clinician. Recently, we used a clinician for someone in another town who needed it. And this clinician was instrumental because that person was going to get released from the hospital. The person was sectioned and brought to the hospital. And within hours, the hospital was ready to release them. But the clinician called and explained the situation, the total package of what was going on and what the family voiced. And that person ended up getting committed and getting help they need. So we really have to get that clinician in here, get officers trained across the board, and make it a priority. Thank you.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg?
I'm very versed on this. I've been working with Aspiring Health since like 2019, trying to get a clinician here. And like Lieutenant Greener says, we've missed opportunities on grants and stuff. The conversations just abruptly stopped just before COVID started. But we do have the connections. We've had past dialogues, and we should be moving aggressively. I've talked to other departments that use a clinician. It's extraordinary the work that these people do that a police officer can't. As chief, I will also join the International Police and Chiefs Association One Mind campaign. What the One Mind campaign is, we have to train 100% of our officers in mental health first aid. 100% of our officers in mental health first aid. 25% of our officers will be trained, just like Commander Morag said, in CIT training, crisis interventions training. That's training that's available. We have to make a commitment to the IACP to do same, and I'm looking forward to doing that. Other departments have done that, and it works very well with them. So we will have our officers, our first responding officers, trained as mental health first responders, as mental health first aid. We'll have people on board, our own people that are CIT trained, and we'll also have a clinician. I guarantee you that's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the role of school resource officers in Randolph Public Schools? Commander Morag.
Thank you. Well, as you said in my bio, you know that I was the town's first school resource officer. Michelle's smiling. Everyone's smiling.
Can't beat that. Can't beat the first.
So what I'd like to say on that is the program, it works. And the school resource officers that we have now do a phenomenal job. They're at the forefront of community outreach. And I know from working in the schools that it's tough to walk that fine line, especially at the beginning, figuring out where that line was. And the role really of a school resource officer is as a mentor, as a coach, helping them with decision making, the students, but also it's a sounding board for the administration and the teachers. And you're actually, as a school resource officer, you're in charge of law enforcement and the law. You're the expert in the building, and people come to you for advice. And arrest and enforcement is the last thing on the plate. I understand that you have to intervene if there's an issue of safety, someone getting seriously injured. Absolutely. They'll do what's needed of them. But SROs are the mentors who run the programs. When I was in the schools, I made it a priority. I ran a 3-on-3 program that was very successful in the school, and I had other officers come in referee games. And I did that for 4 years, coming in early at work, dropping my kids off to my mother for childcare and not getting paid, and starting those programs. And to this day, I still see people, and that's a few years back, and they're in their 20s now, who say, "There's Officer Tony. How you doing?" I still have those relationships that built. And also it really helps as you go on to prevent crime and to gather information, because people trust you. When you're in that situation, they get to know the character that you have and how you handle yourself. So it's a program that's so powerful, and I'd like to make a commitment to that to help the schools and just keep mentoring.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg, School Resource Officers.
School resource officers is a vital piece of our department. I look back to my days when I worked for the Department of Youth Services, when we able to interact with youth and they look to you as a mentor. You really, really look outside yourself that you could help an individual. Working alongside what my history back with the Department of Youth Services, just as Tony said, they want a authoritative figure to interact with them. They want to know our thoughts and what we do. Our two school resources, Kristen Gagnon and Kevin Gilbert, they're probably the best in the state. I always tell Kristen whenever there's we are talking about the kids over at the high school, I think, well, which one of your kids have we've talked to today? So we interact a lot over there, and I think they're guiding lights to us. Kevin Gilbert down at the middle school, he's fantastic. Just the conversations that he has with these kids and respect, it's life learning. It's life learning to these kids, as Tony says, and mentorships is huge. I think the biggest part, and I agree with Tony, is not enforcing the laws, it's mentoring our kids. And what could be better than having an officer in the schools? That's fantastic.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
We do have two of the best, most thorough, compassionate, not only they're police officers, but they're humans, and they really know how to talk to these kids. They're mentors, they're social workers. They're big brothers and big sisters, and that's the role that we need, and we need to give them the time to do these things. They have some of the best programs that you can imagine that we just can't run because they don't have the time to run it. They're getting pulled to patrol. They're, every different direction. We need to give them the time in the schools to work with these children, and they're making a big impact. Getting them Christmas presents and clothing, and the stuff that you don't hear about. They do it daily, and like I said, we need to give them the time to do that. You can pull someone in so many directions, and with police reform, with the way society is now, with the reliance on the police, we need to give them the time to make that impact on a daily basis.
Thank you. Next question. In addition to school resource officers, how can Randolph Police help to decrease juvenile delinquency and support youth outreach and programs? Commander Hammelberg, we'll start with you.
Great question. I'm fortunate. I work with the school district a lot, especially when security needs. I'm a Alice instructor with the schools, and I've been doing that for a number of years. Every time that we get an opportunity to engage youth in whatever setting we are, that's vital. When I sit there and I talk to the kids about staying safe in school, not only am I telling them to stay safe while they're in school, they're building skills and knowledge of what to do, God forbid something happens when they're outside of schools. So dialogue with the children's fantastic. I've been working a lot with Liz LaRose and Kerry Sullivan down at the RIC. We've entertained bringing a boxing program down to the RIC at one time. We've engaged some of the kids, talked to them. Commander Marag and I actually became coaches for USA Boxing. So we have that training to bring that program forward. I think the more the youth see that the police are involved in the community in situations like that, not only are we wearing a badge, but we're out there as mentors, like that conversation has already come up. We need to do that. We need to develop programs. We talked about having PAL in the past. We talked about having basketball leagues. Years ago, I sat on an advisory board with the within the school district itself about getting basketball courts going. That took a lot of time to get going. I worked with some great people, some town founders like Vera McPartland, Valerie Crawford. I worked with some great people getting those programs started. And just like Commander Rag said, when he was doing those 3-on-3s, we'd go down there and watch. Obviously, I'm not a really great basketball player, but no, we try. How's that? But programs like that are vital. When I get a chance to talk to the kids up at the high school, when we're doing an ALICE program, and the feedback that we get back afterwards, right? Last year, I talked to all 700 kids at the high school. How do you beat that? They saw a police officer not only standing up there trying to keep them safe, but engaged in their general conversation afterwards. It is vital. I agree with that.
Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Can you give me the question again, please?
Yes. So in addition to school resource officers, how can Randolph Police help to decrease juvenile delinquency and support youth outreach and programs?
So we do a good job with this on a daily basis with diversion programs. And I think a lot of times people think that we're just out there, busting kids' chops. We're not. We're trying to make a relationship with them. And, and I encourage officers to get out of their cruiser and go play basketball and, let their sergeant know so that they don't have to handle the next call, that they're making relationships. We need to slow the business down of having to rush to call and really talk to these youths. Ton of programs we can do, from anything from a junior police academy to summer camps, help the community with babysitting for a week. I think that's huge. And more diversion programs. We don't just charge juveniles. Actually, it's probably the last thing that we do. We only get, a very minimal number of arrests per year for juveniles. And I want to encourage everyone to go out there and to talk to them, to stop them and have a conversation, see what they think of us. And that's what matters. And maybe they expect something different, and we can change that.
Thank you. Commander Marag?
Sure. Michelle, do you mind repeating that for me
Not at
also?
all.
Thank
So
you.
in addition to the school resource officers, how can Randolph Police help to decrease juvenile delinquency and support youth outreach and programs?
Sure, and it's been said, we're going in the right direction with this, and I know it's been at the forefront. Our juvenile arrest numbers have been dwindling down, and I agree with it. The idea is to get kids in diversion and not get them involved in the justice system. Last year, we had 12 juvenile arrests, half of the previous year. So we're going in the right direction. This year, maybe 2 juvenile arrests. So that's good. We're moving in the right direction with early intervention. And I think that's a big part of it. It's creating those bonds. And I know we talked about the SROs, but we have a lot of officers who do it on their own time and not just the SROs. I would love to see a program started at the RIC, a basketball program. We have gentlemen within our department who coach basketball. I'd love to get them involved. I coached basketball, coached girls basketball for my daughter for a ton of years. And I would love to get some sort of program where we can just start talking to people, start talking to the kids, start mentoring and coaching them and helping them make decisions in life. And I know even when I was teaching DARE, that was the thing at 5th grade, was helping kids find their way if they're having a problem at home. So it's really starting that foundation at a young age and building off it and getting everyone involved, all the officers. They do a great job, and I do want them to reach out to the youth in the community. There's a youth advisory council in town. I would love for officers to go speak to that. I know Detective Tuitt has done that in the past, and other officers have done that in the past. What a great opportunity to outreach to the youth. And when we've had problems, we've had town meetings with the involved parties, the families and the kids, to have that early intervention. We got the school involved. We got the superintendent at those meetings. And sometimes those meetings, they got a little heated, and you get it because parents are involved and it's their children. But that is the key. You have to have those tough conversations to have that early intervention so we don't have down the line a tragedy. And a few years back, we had that tragedy. There was a murder in town of a 16-year-old, and it rocked the community, and that can't happen. And that early intervention is the key. If you start those diversion programs and find out the people who have gone in the wrong direction, you can steer them in the right direction and make it a positive impact on the community.
Thank you. Next question. Gun violence is a problem nationwide, caused in part by gang activity. Does Randolph have a gang problem, and what will you do to address it? We're beginning with Detective Lieutenant Green.
We have gangs here. We have groups here. Is it a problem like a city would have? No. Is it a problem for our town? Yes. We do have a number of shootings that are happening, and we need to give our officers time to investigate those and to be more intelligence-led police department, try to figure out why this is happening to begin with, and maybe we can kind of nip it in the butt before it happens. We do have a street crimes unit. We need to give them the time on the street to talk to these kids and to talk to our own residents and to inform neighborhoods of what's happening. Do I think that Randolph's a bad town or that people are in danger? I don't. I think it's localized crime, and we're on top of it. We have some pretty awesome officers out there daily trying to build that rapport with the youth, with intelligence, with informants, and with talking to businesses and encouraging residents to get cameras, and we need that, and we have to keep that community relation together, and that's what's going to stop some of these problems. Is that when you see a car that doesn't seem right or a group of kids forming, let us know, and we'll take a drive by. There's nothing that prevents us to just stop and talk to someone and say hello, say, what are you doing here? And we want that. So that community policing is another aspect of that.
Thank you. Commander Morag?
Joe, can you repeat the question?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Gun violence is a problem nationwide, caused in part by gang activity. Does Randolph have a gang problem, and what will you do to address it?
Well, I worked in the street crimes unit to address gang violence from 2008 to 2015. So I understand the trends, and it's my opinion that there are cycles, especially when it comes to violence within the community. And back when the unit was started, and I was a sergeant of it, it was a cycle, it was an uptick. And we had those events I talked about earlier. And whether you call it gangs, whatever you want to call it, to me, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's violence that affects the community. And you could possibly get people seriously injured and innocent people. So my idea at the time was to use intelligence-led policing and really focus. I understand that you can do proactive policing to address these issues. You can do stop and frisk, which has been used other places. But my opinion is those have a shelf life. And really nowadays, that's not the way to police. The way to police is gather intelligence, create those bonds with the community so they can give you the information you need to address those issues of violence. I know last year we had 25 incidents of shots fired. That's too many, way too many for our community. And our officers do an amazing job on a daily basis. The officers in the street crimes units, the officers on patrol, the officers from the street crimes unit exchange information with everyone on the department. So we have patrolmen who know who the main offenders are. And that's the key. It's only that 1% of the community that creates that gun violence. So use that intelligence to really focus on those parties. And what we did in our unit over the years, and we received the Dana Award for the work that we did in that unit, is it was a laser focus on the serious offenders. Build strong cases and put them in jail. So that's the key. And we got to ride this cycle. Right now, I feel there is an uptick in the cycle, but we have to stay on it to address those issues as they come about. And it needs to be everyone within the department. It needs to be information from the community to address these issues. Thank you.
Commander Hammelberg.
The question does come up a lot. And I look back at my career when I first started. I do have to say I've been here 35 years. It's a long time. People ask me, what's the difference between when you started, John, to where we are now? It's crime was crime. Crime has always happened. But what we're seeing, it's more violence than I've ever saw before. We have brand new officers. I've been on 35 years. We have brand new officers that have been to more shooting scenes than I have in my whole career. Some of these officers, like Commander Morag said, right now there's a little bit of uptick. There's accusations and confirmed shots fired almost on every 10 days. We're working hard and diligence to our street crimes unit, to our detectives assigned to that unit, to engage the community. That's huge. We have to get out there and engage community to talk what's going on. It goes back to the quality of life of living here in the community, just like I told you. We have to have true partnerships to take care of this. Do we have gangs? Yes, we do. It was a taboo to say that years ago. Yes, we have gangs. Some of the gangs are influenced by other communities around here. Some of the gang members that live outside the community have family here, have friends here, have girlfriends, have their children here in town. It is scary times when we know, all right, what may happen or what may not happen. But through community engagement and diligent detective work that we do, we're above the curve on this. But like you said, gun violence is dangerous. We should partner up with our community. We should partner up with Mothers Against Gun Violence. We should do all this. Without conversation, we fail. Thank you.
Thank you. Programs such as GREAT, the Gang Resistance Education and Training Program, and the Citizens Police Academy that exist in Randolph. Do you have plans to expand community involvement and or provide additional programs? Commander Morag, we're starting with you.
Sure. The Citizens Police Academy is a great program, and I do want to get people involved. And I like the idea of a youth academy also, but I'd like to do a condensed version. And because sometimes 10 to 12 weeks is just too long for people to make that commitment. So I'd like to do smaller groups within the community enhancement partnerships to address those issues and to run those programs, so that maybe that day they don't want to do a presentation regarding traffic enforcement. They want to do a presentation regarding the parking problems we have, whatever, domestic violence. We can do those presentations, in that they can sign up for that day, show up to the partnership with a small group, have one-on-one with officers, and get some answers to those questions that they have. The GREAT program, we can build off that. I'd like to run some programs in the schools, but not just with the SROs. I'd like other officers involved regarding decision making. And I know we have a few officers now that are doing it on their own time. They dedicate themselves to do programs. And the sergeants are good enough to free up these officers, and they teach a decision-making model to the young students. But I'd like that to permeate through the school system, that decision-making process. So that'd be one of the programs I'd like to bring. And I had other ideas regarding neighborhood walks and getting people involved to have that one voice together. I'd like to do events at the school track Our officers do fitness assessments every year, and we use the school track this year. And I am amazed by how many people use that track from the community. What a great opportunity that is to run a program up there. We were handing out waters, having conversations, people asking what the officers were doing, what was the test, and I'd like to have them involved. And part of the program is I'd like to have the community come out in May. We have a fitness cup every year for the officers, and I'd like the community to come out on a field day and try those events, COVID permitting, obviously, but in socially distance and mask. But I would love to have that opportunity, and I'd like youth from the high school to show up and test their skills, whatever events we choose, whether it's the run, the bench press. We're flipping tires this year, but we mean all sorts of things. Yes. But what I'd like to say is that, you know, you got to get creative. So I want the input on what programs we run, you know, and I have some ideas and we'll try to implement them. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm chuckling because we do see the workouts from the windows while I'm drinking my coffee.
You probably hear the loud music too. I apologize.
Maybe.
I apologize.
Commander Hamelberg, same question. If you want me to repeat it, I can.
I think I have the gist of it.
Thank you.
I love the Citizens Police Academy. I've been involved in it since it's started here. I really enjoy it. Last week, I was CC'd on an email that was sent to Sergeant Richie Hughes, who was in charge of the Citizens Police Academy. It was from a young male here, 28-year-old black male autistic kid who participated in our Citizens Police Academy. He wanted to thank us for what we did. He wanted to thank us for all that we do here in town. He wanted there were several other officers listed with my name along with Sergeant Hughes that he'll never forget his time and his experiences at the Citizens Police Academy. We were able to take him to the training academy here in Randolph and put them through a simulated shooting scene. And he loved it. When you saw this kid with a big, huge smile on his face get involved in it and see the reactions from the other folks, because he was a big boy, a big kid. But you have to understand, when we get out into the public and we talk to people and they see us not only with a badge or with a patch on, and they see us as human beings. And that's a huge part of what we're missing at times. We have to develop these programs. We have to go forward with them. Since the Police Academy is great, bringing people to, they see it through our eyes. A lot of times at the end of the Citizen Police Academy, when we sit there, we'll have some type of a sandwich or a cake at the end of it that goes, I can't believe the work that you folks do here. And though to condense it a little bit so more people get involved, like Commander Marag says, I'm all for that. I think that's fantastic. Getting people involved in what we actually do outside the job or what we do inside the job is vital to community engagement. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
I agree with Commander Marag in that decision-making model needs to permeate the schools and it needs to permeate the entire community. And, you know, the officer that started that, I know he worked with a teacher in town, a local teacher, and it's a phenomenal program of decision-making. And, you know, I think they talk about drug use and drug addiction. And those are big topics that these kids are seeing nowadays with, you know, problems in the family. And we can't hide from these topics. We have to have these conversations and we have to bring about programs that are going to shed light on how to come out on the positive end of these things. You know, I'd like to see, again, I like the Citizen Police Academy idea too. I like it for different groups. We ran an elder police academy that was phenomenal. You know, I don't think anyone was younger than 80 and they loved it. It was an amazing program to run a juvenile or a junior academy, you know, putting physical fitness in it and giving them that mini law enforcement experience. I think, you know, helps with recruitment later on in life, believe it or not, if we can build those relationships. You know, we live in we work and live in the most diverse community in the Commonwealth. Let's have a cultural day. Let's have cookouts. You know, I want to eat all this different food that I've never eaten before. I want to be involved in that. And I think it's building those relationships. And, you know, when you have these things and you're talking to citizens, they might want to see a different program and they might have a great idea that we never thought of. And that's building those partnerships that we have to get back to. Thank you.
And just for a time check, just so that you're aware, we are 1 hour into this. I did commit to an hour and a half, so I will go through some additional questions, but I do want an opportunity for each of you to provide a statement at the end. Next question. What does social justice and equity mean to you and to your administration as Chief of Police? Commander Hammelberg, we begin with you.
Those are hot topics, obviously. Social justice, inequalities, what we see people living through, some systemic racism across the country, and which is a real thing, because people that I encounter, they tell me about, you don't know how it is from my shoes. You don't know what we do, what we go through day in, day out. What we need to do is focus on those social justice, synthetic racism, biases and stuff. We have to bring that to a forefront. We have to admit that certain things are not as equal to others. My philosophy going forward will be procedural justice. Procedural justice based on 4 central principles: treating people with dignity and respect, giving citizens voice during encounters, being neutral in decision-making, conveying trustworthy motives. Research has demonstrated that the community has trust and confidence in the police as honest, unbiased, and benevolent and lawful. The community feels obligated to follow the law and the dictates of legal authority. The community feels it shares with the police. We have to have these conversations, right? We have to treat people with dignity and respect. We have to give them a voice when we encounter them. We have to be open-minded. Sometimes we miss the boat by not having conversations about social justice, what it means to certain people, what it doesn't mean to certain people. Some people, they look upon what we do, especially as being a white police officer, as being white privileged, all right? We're not. We're in the same boat as everybody else. We want to work hand in hand, community engagement. Are there biases out there? Is there synthetic racism? Yes. Social justice means equality for all. We have to do this. I agree with it.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
One of the, obviously, if I get the job, there's going to be a lot of things that need to happen. And I think what needs to happen is our mission statement and our values need to change. And we have to promote an atmosphere that human life is number one, and equality is right along with that. And I agree that procedural justice has to permeate the department. And I think it does now. We treat people fairly. We're giving people their say in the process. We need to do a better job at explaining instead of just arresting someone, maybe taking that, 5-10 minutes after the call to explain why we arrested them, what resources that follow. We have to remember that the police are only one cog in the wheel, and we need to get other agencies involved, the schools, town government, businesses. And we want to build those relationships so that all the cogs can come together and have that equality. And we want to make it happen. We want to lead that. The police want to be involved in those conversations, those tough conversations of what can change, what can't change. And let's do it.
Thank you. Commander Morag?
Sure. Social justice has been at the forefront the last year. And I look at these opportunities, and it was a tough year for law enforcement. But you know what? It's always great to self-evaluate, to look at yourself, to understand that there are biases and that there is social injustice. You need to relate to people and show empathy and compassion. And then the other candidates were talking about procedural justice. So you have to give people a say. You show up to a call, you need to listen, because that's probably the toughest day that person's having. So you have to show compassion and empathy and try to relate, understand their background, get to know people. And that's going to be really the foundation of how we get better as a community. We're the most diverse community in Massachusetts. How great is that? And our department is diverse, and we're building forward for the future. So we represent the demographic of the town. What a great thing that is. We have some phenomenal officers who embrace this. And we're going to make a focus. We're going to do implicit bias training. I went to training my own 2 years ago. And It was not what I expected. The instructor was phenomenal, a deputy chief from Northeastern University. And he was originally a commander out of Miami-Dade. And he brought forward, there were 3 types of biases. There's biases individual that you grew up with. There's professional bias related to law enforcement. There's department bias within your department. And when you really self-evaluate, you could see that there are biases there. But you can't let it how you police. You can't let it adjust how you police. You treat everyone fairly, and everyone should have a voice. And it's very important in this community. That should be at the forefront. And we do a phenomenal job with that. But honestly, you have to self-evaluate. We can always do better, and we'll keep looking forward with the help of these partnerships and the stakeholders and the town councils involved. I want input. I want to have those tough conversations. I'll accept criticism when it comes, because how do you get better? Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. What is your position on Second Amendment rights access for Randolph residents? And we are starting with Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Can you explain?
Second Amendment rights, right to bear arms.
Yeah, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
I'm sorry, what is your position on Second Amendment rights access for Randolph residents?
It's a constitutional right. Everyone should have the right, if they so choose, to possess and bear arms. Obviously, they have to do it legally, and they have to follow the rules. And that's when we step in and enforce them if they're not.
Thank you. Commander Morag?
Sure. When it comes to the Second Amendment, us as law enforcement and police officers, we're bound. We're bound by the Constitution. We're bound by the Second Amendment. We're bound by Article 17 within the Massachusetts Constitution. So we don't pick a side. Those are the guidelines that we follow. And if a person's suitable to carry a firearm, we have 1,200 licenses that get requested in our department every year. So we just fall into those guidelines, and we follow the disqualifiers and the suitability issues. So we don't pick a side one way or the other. So we're bound by that. So that is my opinion on that.
Thank you. Commander Hammelberg.
It's a great question, because you see it every time there's a change in leadership across the country. Everyone's looking to protect their Second Amendment and bear arms. We see that a lot. Massachusetts has the most strictest gun laws across the nation, and should be a model across the country to use that. People come and apply to us to get a license, and I know we're very backlogged right now because of COVID and whatnot. And some people, we're taking applications and not processing them quick enough for people. I understand that. We're even backlogged. I think we're backlogged till June with so many requests for license to carry. Sorry. There is a process here, and I want the people to let them know that we're not pushing those applications aside. There's a process, right? They have to come in, they have to fill out the application. The application gets processed by Lieutenant Emerson, and now Lieutenant Serino is helping him out. They do a thorough background check. Once that is done, their information is entered into what is referred to as a MERX computer. MERX computer comes back, and we check for, are they suitable, as Commander Morag says? Do they have any disqualifiers? So I understand that it doesn't come out as fast as people would like. Myself, I have a license to carry. My youngest daughter has a license to carry. Her husband has a license to carry. It's their right, God-given right. They have that, and I protect the Second Amendment. I agree with it 100%.
Thank you. I will ask one more question and give you then an opportunity to make a closing statement for the members of the public watching. Understand that I do have a full page of questions that didn't get asked, and we are just running short of time. So your questions were incorporated. We have just run out of time. An hour and a half certainly isn't sufficient for this forum, and we'll learn from this for whenever the next time is. So the final question, and let's see, I'm trying to make sure I have my order here. I believe we start with.
I just went.
Very nice.
Don't want to be on that hot seat. That's outstanding.
The final question is, what resources will you use to keep residents educated, informed, aware, and engaged. And we start with Commander Morag.
Excellent. At the forefront. So social media obviously is the platform that we need to use and use more. And it's evolving. And we have some officers who really do a great job with that. And I'm going to make that one of those secondary units, a social media unit, because I want to roll out that information. I want people involved. And I want, officers to do videos so they can meet the officers. Officers who are in the traffic unit, they can do a quick 5-minute video regarding their unit. They can do the school resource officers do a unit, get to know them. So I'd like to use that social media platform so the community can meet everyone and get to know the officers that show up with their calls, and also those community partnerships. And that's obviously, and I've repeated that over and over again, and the other candidates had their ideas too. And I think everyone's in agreement about these partnerships. And that's the way to get everyone involved and get a commitment and move forward and get our message out there. And those partnerships will answer those questions. And if the officers there, and we got phenomenal officers up and down the ranks in patrol, everyone has a great idea. But sometimes you just got to let them give that voice and talk about it and problem solve. And that's how they'll do it. They'll go to those community partnerships and have those meetings and work with the community to solve the problems. Wouldn't it be great? The officer shows up at the door and they're saying, "Hello, officer so-and-so, how you doing?" Or call him by your first name. Phenomenal. That is the future of policing. And that is going to be a focus.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commander Hammelberg.
Part of the President Obama's 21st century policing 6 pillars is technology and social media. We've been a forefront of that. I'm not as savvy as some of the younger officers. I go way back to pages and things like that. And we actually used to have this thing hung on a telephone pole outside that we used to call a payphone. We had that. That's where it has evolved. But it is vital, to use the social media, Twitter accounts, whatever's out there. We have to use that, because as soon as an incident happens, all right, it's being sent out on a tweet or on some other piece of social media. And we have to lead that. We don't need to have a private entity that does that. We should be able to do that ourselves, all right? Moving forward, addressing things, using the technology. We could use Stu and his people at the Randolph Community Television as partnerships on how to get the information out there as quick as possible. It's vital. So we've been entertained over this past, through the pandemic and over the past year, with Detective Tewitt sending out different videos of what he's been taking with his CPR dummies and what they've been doing wrong in his house and stuff, about not being social distancing and stuff like that. That is a big thing, social media, that we have to use. And I look forward, as Commander Morag says, is partnering with the community, developing those programs, and moving forward. Thank you.
Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Social media is definitely going to be on the forefront, and we need to tap into the younger officers. Each new officer that comes on, there's so many different platforms out there that I don't even know, that we need to keep that generational thing going to try to get that youth involved. And I don't want to forget the elders that are in town, or the middle-aged people that want nothing to do with the internet. Sending out bulletins, mailings, citizen surveys, and the meet and greets. I think that's the biggest part, is to know who we are. Little known fact, I was the Randolph Blue Devil. I was the mascot in Randolph High. People need to know that. And we have a lot of class of '98, baby. We have such diverse backgrounds, each and every one of us, and I want the people to know that, and that's very important. And that, like the commander said, that's the future of policing, is to know that you can call me Melissa. Lieutenant means nothing to me. I'm a person too. I want the people to know that.
And I do want you to know that we still have a Blue Devil costume, so.
It might be Mr. Howard's wife may have me somewhere. So
we have one.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So I have time, and I am going to squeeze in one more question, and then ask you to kind of do a summary at the end. And I think we start with Where am I? We just did it. Commander Hammelberg will be first on this one. Sorry. Trying to keep my list straight. What will be your approach to recruitment and retention in the department in order to make sure that Randolph Police represents the demographics of our community?
If we look at it, we have 61 police officers right now. That includes the chief police. Right now, we're 29.5% minority, and of that, 22.9% of color, 70% white. We have 8% of our force is female. But we look ahead, and I go back. I went and I looked at our last 20 hires. All right, our last 20 hires that we our new officers, including the folks that we have in the academy right now, 65% of them are minority. 65% of them, 50% of those of color. We're moving in the right direction as the community wishes us to go. I think it's a really good move on our part, not on our part, but on our looking into the youth, building those bridges to bring them on board as police officers. Community engagement is huge here. This is where we have to have. I've done some work with the youth council here in town. I've done some work with the future leaderships after high school and talk to the kids about becoming police officers. It's hard times to say, yeah, I wish to be a police officer, especially with what's going on across the country, but not here in Randolph. We welcome. Come and join our force. We're like's been said here, we're the most culturally and linguistic diverse community in the Commonwealth here. And I loved what Melissa said. I want to eat that food. All right. Where we fail at training, all right, we do cultural diversity bias training. We don't know anything about the diversity in our town compared to what they do for religious beliefs and their customs. We should be doing that. When we engage people such as that in their own customs, and we start dialogue and community engagement, all right, those are future police officers. We're missing that opportunity. So engagement with our youth, engagements in our diverse community and talking to them and bring them on board. Come be a Randolph police officer. It works very well for us to bring young people aboard. We've had interns that have become police officers. Melissa is one of those. Kevin Gilbert was another. All right, Jeff Chaplin, another one. That started off here as interns and became police officers. We should develop that program moving forward. We should have an open intern program. I've talked to people over at the high school about developing that. Last year, we were going to bring 2 kids over, but because of COVID, we weren't allowed to do that. But that's something we will continue in the future as when I'm the chief, that we'll do an internship program. We will engage in the youth. We'll have career days. We'll open up our doors. We'll have the public come in and see what we do. Come and join us as a Randolph police officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Lieutenant Greener on recruitment and retention to represent the diversity of our community.
I think it first starts with the line officer, the people that are out there daily interacting with people. It could be that kid that works at the pizza shop becoming a detective one day. And we need to tap into those resources. We need to do open houses, explain what we do, explain the civil service process, have classes to see if people are interested in what they do. A lot to this job isn't just law enforcement. 85+% of what we do is social work and quality of life issues. And I think that we need to get that message out there because it's going to attract a whole new crowd. And, working with the community, talking with the businesses in town, getting the Department of the Commerce Department involved, and, the DPW, everything. We want to talk to everyone. If anyone knows anyone, refer them to us. Any police officers love to talk. And they will explain the process, and they'll explain the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we welcome it.
Thank you. Commander Morag.
Sure, it's a great question to ask. And I really feel a department should represent the demographic of the community. And our department has made that a priority over the years. Since 2008, 22 hires, 15 have been from the minority community. And we're moving forward. And eventually those officers will be promoted. We have some phenomenal officers that are ready to take that next step. And we're going to make that a priority. And I'd like to use those partnerships and the stakeholders, because somebody mentioned to me, we're not identifying the future leaders within the diverse community. We're not. They're going to other jobs. So we need to reach out. I need to talk to city councilors, clergy. I need them to be a partnership and promote. If you want change within your town and you want to make a difference, apply for the job. I would have seminars at the department, run a 4-hour class for anyone who wants to take that test, the civil service test. And we'll do a 4-hour meeting. If they show up and take the class, we'll pay for their civil service test. So we'll get them on the path. So we do need to embrace how great our community is in the demographic, and our department should show that. And we are taking those steps. And I understand that you need those officers. I've been in interviews of officers, new candidates, for lots of years. I do the background investigations. And recently one of the officers brought up Detective Tuitt. And I don't think it's just the first interview, it's probably other interviews. What a phenomenal role model for that community, for the Black community, Detective Tuitt. And that other officer now that we hired, phenomenal. So we are building a strong foundation for the future that represents what our community is and what the great part of our community is. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing statements. Detective Lieutenant Greener.
Sure. First, I'd like to address all the officers that are watching. I think you all know that I'm a doer, and as chief, I will continue to do and advocate for you, and show my leadership and try to get you the best that I can get you: training, equipment, manpower, and this job, the police chief job, to me, isn't about me. It's about the department, and it's about the community. And to the community members that are watching and streaming, you have my word that you'll have a compassionate, passionate, severely honest police chief if I'm picked. And I look forward to working with you. And I want those partnerships. And like the commander said, I welcome the criticism, because that's how we get better. And I look forward to it. So thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
Thank you. Commander Morag.
Michelle, thank you very much. Outstanding moderator. You've done this before, I think.
First time for everything.
I'd like to thank the community for some great questions, and I know there'll be a lot of questions down the line, and I'll be willing to answer when I can and find answers for you. I really have a passion for the community and law enforcement. I'm a second-generation police officer, and it means something to me. And I've always taken it to heart that I'm a leader that's built off of relationships, and I want to build those relationships. And when I walked in the door 25 years ago, I never had a thought of being a police chief. I just wanted to be the best officer that I could. I wanted to be the kind of officer that if showed up to my mother's house to answer a call, she'd be that officer's professional, thorough, and compassionate. So that's what I want for the whole department. And we do a great job at it. And I want to have those partnerships in the community. That's going to be the focus. And I've said it over and over again, but I can't stress it enough. We need involvement from the community to solve these issues moving forward. And we really have to listen to our officers. We have amazing officers who have great ideas, and we need their input. From patrol up to lieutenant, up to commanders, everyone should have a say. And I want to get that input to bring across this unified policing approach. But in the long run, I feel if selected, I'm ready to lead this community and lead this department. And I'll be willing to step forward. But honestly, the way it should work is we all walk side by side. And we face the future together and we solve our problems. And to the men and women of the Randolph Police Department, they do selfless service. And I thank them for the job in this great community. And the other candidates, they're amazing too. And it's proud to be up here with them. And Chief Pace, what a legacy he's left for us. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commander Morag. Commander Hamilberg.
Michelle, I want to thank you. You did an outstanding job. I I want to thank the community, the citizens of Randolph, Town Manager Brian Howard, obviously Chief Pace, Commander Rag, and Detective Lieutenant Greener. You really made me step up my game, you two. People have come to me and says, I could have retired 3 years ago. I've been here 35 years. And people ask, why don't you just go? Especially now, John, why don't you go? And I even told the other two candidates, for me to leave now, it would be like I was quitting when someone needs me the most. I would never, ever tarnish our badges. I look forward to moving forward with police reform and whatnot. But right now, strong leadership is needed, and I have a track record of doing the same. Unfortunately, highly publicized uses of force incidents, officer-involved shootings has exacerbated mistrust of police and highlighted the widening gap between officers in the community. I have a proven record in our community. I work with the community, I work with the school district, I work with the houses of worship, I work with the business community, active shooter preparedness for them as a house instructor, as a CRAZE instructor. I've worked with the Future Leaders program over at the high school. I've worked with the youth council here in Randolph. I look forward, to being the next chief of Randolph. There's been 10 chiefs. I've worked for 6. I've developed my qualities from the mentorship that I've got from those people. When I was a kid, I used to go fishing with Pat McDonald, first chief of Randolph. What I could pick up in 2 hands, he could pick up with 1. That's how strong he was. And I look forward to being the next chief of Randolph. What I will leave you with is this, all right? In 1954, a young boy approached a Louisville police officer and said his bicycle was stolen. The boy said to the officer, when I catch the thief, I'm gonna whoop him. The officer looked down at the boy and says, you know how to fight. And the kid looked up at him, and the officer invited him to go to a boxing gym where he mentors young boxers. 6 years later, that youth won the 1960 gold medal in the Olympics as a boxer. That officer was unaware at the time, but he was speaking with young Cassius Clay. When Muhammad Ali died, his wife, Lonnie Ali, put it best. In the presence of dignitaries from across the world, past presidents and other dignitaries, she said, when a cop and an inner city youth speak and have a conversation, miracles can happen. And that's a legacy that I want to bring forward as chief with the involvement in the community and being a strong leader, not only for our police department, but for the youth here in the town of Randolph. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. I have appreciated this evening. I appreciate my relationship with you as a resident of Randolph, and as a colleague, I do appreciate working with you. I would be remiss if I didn't thank our technical team, Stu and Dave in the background running this. Thank you so much for your work tonight. Also, and in closing, I would like to thank Town Manager Brian Howard for putting together this forum and giving the community an opportunity to ask questions and to hear from the future police chief of Randolph and to become engaged in the process. So, Mr. Howard, thank you for that. Community members, thank you for the phenomenal questions. I am sorry that we didn't get to all of them. They were quite an impressive array of questions, and I hope that you all turn out for additional engagement in the community, whether it is through town council, through other activities that are not limited to Randolph Police. Thank you all, and good night.
Thank you.